recognized.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This next item is a future land use request to go from commercial to low-medium density residential and a rezoning from R1A to R1 for a property that measures 0.71 gross acres and 0.48 net acres in District 6. The request is for up to 5 single-family homes. Again, the subject property is located within District 6. The current future land use is commercial. The proposed future land use is low-medium density residential. Current zoning is R1A, and the proposed zoning is R1. This is an aerial of the subject property showing it on the east side of Tacoma Street. The other properties on Tacoma Street are all residential. 159 public hearing notices were sent to an area extending beyond 700 feet from the subject parcel. To date, we have received 0 responses in favor and 1 response in opposition. A community meeting was not required for this request. At the Planning and Zoning Commission Local Planning Agency hearing, there were no speakers present to speak on the matter. The Planning and Zoning Commission Local Planning Agency is recommending that the board make a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan and adopt the low-medium density residential future land use map amendment, adopt the associated ordinance, and approve the R1 zoning. Staff is available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant on this item present? If so, would you like to come forward and offer any comments? Okay. Applicant is not present? Okay. Then do we have any members of the public present who wish to be heard on this item? Again, this is E8.
We do, Mayor. We have 4 speaker cards for this item.
All right. The speakers will be given 2 minutes, and we're going to call you in the order in which we receive your cards, and we'll ask that you go to the podium, to the mic.
All right. First speaker is Deamira Gomez. What is your name, sir?
My name is Ishmael Galaza.
Ah, well, you're up next. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, and as you go to the podium, please give us your name and your address for the record, please.
Yeah, my name is Ishmael Galarza. I live at 319 Tacoma Street, Orlando, Florida, 32811. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and
Good afternoon.
the rest of the commissioners. Yes, like I was before, it was July 18 that was postponed. July 22nd, they started doing activity of dump trucks dumping mountains of dirt after they said it was postponed. Like I said, they didn't have nothing against doing the construction or development of the area, but it was concerned because after that there came rain, the 1st to the 23rd, 24th, and we were flooded, especially in my house and unfortunately the other neighbors that live on Dover Street. And the August 25th, they started doing the dumping and planning the dirt that was there, and it was causing from that date up to the 30th the wetland. It was impacted, I believe, like 99%. Nothing was coming down of the stormwater. All the stormwater was stuck in my property and the other street of Dover Street property. The water is still getting clogged in after the city came and cleaned my drainage, but didn't solve the problem. It's just the water is still stuck on the drainage area that was, unfortunately, they clogged it in with the dirt. They put it illegally, worked without no permission or authorization to do that kind of type of work to do it. Unfortunately, by the time I get out of work, it was already done. So I got only pictures, but this is my phone, so I don't have it separately, so that probably could be for another next time if it ever happens. But it's like, well, like I said, we don't have no problem with it. The only thing we have to still deal with this, the drainage, and that brings mosquitoes. And mosquitoes, I got my granddaughter. My neighbor has his kids. She got pets. I got pets. It's a major concern. And mosquitoes bites is not fun because we get at a lot of stuff. And I was recently had a couple. I had a sickness because of that. Not a bad one, but I know how to resolve it. But like I said, we don't have nothing against that. It's like better development gets the house prices up, but they have to fix the situation, the drainage, how the wetland could go, protects it, and don't have no over flood that could cause damage to our properties, being homeowners of the middle class. So I really appreciate it for your turn. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Galarza. Do we have any other speakers?
We have one more speaker card, Johanna Barrios.
Hello, my name is Johanna Cruz Barrios. I live at 331 Dover Street, Orlando, Florida, 32811. I'm not against whatever they want to do back there, but right now I'm very affected just with the little rain because they doing activities back there that they don't supposed to be doing, dumping dirt, knocking trees down, covering with dirt. My house got affected. I'm flooded. And it's hard. As a single person trying to work and trying to do my stuff, like I said, I don't mind whatever they want to do as long as it don't affect me. But right now it's affecting me. I had to dig from the back to the front to get water out of my house. And being in the house, I purchased my house 10 years ago, never had that problem until we had the hurricane. Then we had a lot of water. I opened my gates, the water went out. But right now the water's stuck. I got a lot of mosquitoes. I'm diabetic. And I'm trying to deal with work. I work at 3 o'clock in the morning and come home and start digging to get water out because the water's coming towards my house. And I'm trying to save my house. But they illegally dumping stuff. I call Orange County. I complain. They came out. They look at it. We're going to do some work on it, but I haven't heard nothing back. Right now, the storm is coming. I'm going to be underwater. And that's the complaint I got. My neighbors next to me, they got water too. My septic tank was covered with water up to my knees. I couldn't even flush my toilet. So I'm very affected. I don't mind whatever they want to do as long as they do it legally. Right now, they cover the way where the water was running to the drains to the pound. So everything's smashing, the water is just stuck, and there's a lot of mosquitoes. There's a lot of frogs. And being diabetic, I'm scared to go outside and be there alone. I got 2 puppies. I got to take them out. And I just got to run in and run back inside. Now I got pictures. I got videos. I send it to Orange County and everything so they know.
Thank you, Ms. Barrios.
Thank you.
Do we have other speakers on this item?
That was the last speaker card, Mayor.
All right. I'll give the applicant, well, the applicant wasn't here unless it came in, opportunity for any rebuttal comments. I don't see anyone moving as the applicant, so we'll close the public hearing. We'll go to the district commissioner, Commissioner Scott, for a potential motion.
Motion for approval.
Okay. Motion for approval. Is there a second?
I
Commissioner
don't.
Gomez-Cordero, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Commissioner, they was saying about the mosquitoes, and so have you sent, the mosquitoes?
So we
to-
have had mosquito control. They've been doing spraying, so they increased the frequency. A lot of times they've been going at nighttime where folks are not seeing it, but they've increased the frequency of the spraying, not just in that area, but quite a few areas, given the multiple reports of the mosquito-borne injuries, not just specific to Orange County, but across the state. So they are working on it.
And did you check about the flooding and the dumping things there? And
The
stuff?
dumping, I've been trying for the dumping. So with code enforcement, I know they've reached out to Public Works with the claw truck to pick up the dumping, but it's a never-ending cycle. I've tried multiple times, but it's something to keep hitting at, but I've never been able to overcome the dumping, not in that area, but just all over specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wilson?
A similar question, just trying to understand a little bit about the residents' concerns and hearing the anxiety and upset tone about what's happening back there. How does it relate to this application? Because if those are separate issues and you're working through it, I don't want to hold this up, but I just want to make sure I understand.
So how does phrase your question again? I'm sorry.
Sorry. So the resident described there was activity back there, dumping and other movement of sounds like dirt and like natural vegetation that's impacting them.
Right.
And just wondering how that is involved with this case and whether or not you've been able to address it with the applicant, or if it is a separate issue, if there's something we can make sure they.
So I believe it's a separate issue, but dumping has been a challenge for me. Like just every week I'm sending an email to code enforcement reference to illegal dumping all over. And so usually what they propose to me is signage, but even the signage doesn't curb the issue. In reference to the applicant, I can continue this. I can make a motion for I can withdraw my motion to approve, and we can do a continuance, and then I can.
I would be more.
I just don't know that
Okay.
that the dumping is.
Please.
But so Mayor, I withdraw the motion for approval. I'll make a motion for continuance.
Second, Wilson.
Okay,
John.
continues to,
John, you want to give us dates?
Again, our dates are October 8th or October 29th.
Can we push? Oh, that's it for this year.
Well, or November. I mean, I can certainly.
Can we do November?
the 29th. Just
November
for-
19th is that next date.
Let me just try to understand something. The applicant for this is when they talk about persons who've been doing things, they're not talking about the applicant, right?
We don't know because we can't ask the applicant.
Yeah, that's why.
So he's doing something.
So their concern is not necessarily what the applicant is applying to do, but what it sounds like their concern is about whatever is happening that may be causing
Other activities that I can't attribute to the applicant, but given.
Yeah, so that's a
Very
different
helpful to have it.
situation. That's something perhaps we can work with staff to look into. And with the continuous, so we're looking to.
But he said, but you said October was heavy, so that's why I didn't want to do October. So I mean,
So at least with this current board, we've got the October 8th, October 29th, November 19th dates.
but which was the date you said
potentially
was a
available.
heavy meeting? I remember.
Well, we have significant cases on both October 8th and I think also October 29th.
Okay, so let's do the November date. Just I don't want to have.
Because you can check,
Okay.
Commissioner,
Yeah,
you
give time
can
to
check to
check.
see what happened when this rain comes, if it's flooding. And
I got you.
Okay, so the motion would be to.
Continue to November
19th
19th at 2 p.m.
at 2 p.m.
at 2 p.m.
And the seconder was Commissioner Gomez Cordero. Commissioner Wilson. The seconder is Commissioner Wilson. All right. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes, and it is unanimous. All right. So that case, to you all, that case is being continued to the 19th of November. The next item on the agenda this afternoon is E9, and it's my understanding that this item is being requested to be continued, but it has been advertised, so we have to open it. Mr. Sorensen, we'll ask you to frame that item.
Yes, yes, Mayor, that's correct. The applicant was unable to make it to this hearing, so he has made it known that he can go to the October 8th, so that's the request to continue to October 8th at 2 p.m.
Wait, you said he can't make it to October? Or?
He can't make it today, but he can for October 8th.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, and is this a
So-
relatively short item for the 8th?
I'm sorry.
Is it a relatively short item for the 8th?
It should be, yes.
I know. All right, so the Commissioner Uribe is not here, but it's my understanding that Commissioner Moore will. But I do have to just check and see if the applicant is not present. Are there members of the public that wish to be heard on this item?
We have no speaker cards for this item, Mayor.
Then we'll close the public hearing. We'll entertain a motion for continuance. Commissioner Moore.
Yes, so moved.
Second.
Okay. The motion is to continue until the afternoon of October the 8th, 2 p.m. The seconder is Commissioner Gomez Cordero. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes, and it is unanimous. All right, the next item on our agenda for this afternoon is F10. And F10 is an ordinance. It is my understanding that this item had a publishing notice error, and consequently it is canceled for today. There is no action to be taken today on that item. And then the next item is item F11. We'll open the public hearing on this item, and we'll call on Mr. Matt Callis, the Chief Engineer from Development Engineering, who will be framing this item. With that, you're recognized.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, today I bring forward to you an ordinance. If we can get the PowerPoint going.
Miles might have to pull it up.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, so I'm here before you to bring an ordinance for Chapter 34, Code Update in response to Senate Bill 812. So we're going to go through purpose, background, current process, proposed optional process, our P&Z recommendation, a summary, and an action requested. So this is in response to Senate Bill 812, signed by the governor earlier this year. This ordinance requires counties and municipalities over a certain population to have a program in effect by October 1st to expedite the process for issuing building permits for residential subdivisions in accordance with the Florida Building Code prior to a final plat being recorded in the public records. Initially, the statute, now codified under Florida statutes, Chapter 177-073, requires local governing body to process an applicant's request for up to 50% of the planned homes in the subdivision by October 1st, 2024. The local government also has the ability to increase this up to 75% by October 1st, 2027. However, in no case can the local government body alter or restrict the applicant from receiving the number of requested amounts of building permits. The law does not restrict a local governing body from issuing more than the baseline of 50%. The statute comes with a two-step process. Step number one is to create an application program for the adoption of a preliminary plat, inclusive of any other plans, i.e. preliminary subdivision plan and or construction plans. The application is to identify the receiving number of building permits to be issued. This application will also include the acceptance of surety in the amount of 130% of the necessary improvements, a notice to utility providers, and a hold harmless and indemnification agreement. Step two provides for a master building permit process. If a local government agency does not have one already in existence, it will need to create one consistent with Florida statutes 553.794, the building construction plans, and Florida Building Code. Staff assessment of this ordinance. Currently, our building permits are not released until, one, the necessary infrastructure is installed and operational. Number two, site addressing is established. Number three, fire and EMS have accessibility to the construction sites in case any accidents occur, that they can access that construction to provide their services. Also, financial assurance for any portion remaining to be constructed. And lastly, the final plat recording, which guarantees the certificate of occupancy and sale of lots. Please notice that the new term that's introduced, preliminary plat, is not the same as a PSP. The issuance of building permits will require extensive staff coordination. In our current process, usually takes on average of around 24 to 48 months. Once a land use plan or rezoning plan is approved, if required, the PSP is reviewed by staff and ultimately brought to the BCC for consideration. If approved construction plans and plat it is that point that approved construction plans and plat preparation can begin once the BCC approves the PSP. After the requisite staff approvals are given and necessary signatures obtained, then the final plat can be recorded, at which point building permits can commence and site construction can begin. The PSP is typically prepared by an engineer. It depicts lots, streets, tracks, infrastructure, signage, marking, and landscape plans. However, the PSP does not have the necessary detail to construct or to convey any lots. Current code has no language that defines what a quote-unquote preliminary plat or what a final plat is. Our current code delegates the authority to sign a plat in order to record it. In our current process, plat preparation is prepared by a licensed surveyor. It generally details, the geometry details are down to the 100th of a foot so that lots, tracks, easements, streets can be conveyed and dedicated to various individuals, entities, and or the public and local government. This is not an engineering plan, but rather a legal document that has to be relied upon once it's recorded. Once approved and recorded, this allows for lots to be sold and houses to be built. Do we currently allow for any residential building permits prior to platting? Short answer is yes in two instances. Number one, under special circumstances through no fault of the applicant or developer. And number two, model home permits. The model home permit is something that we've been working with since around 2016, last updated in 2023. It allows for 5 homes or 1 6-unit townhome all clustered together. It requires a site plan showing proposed lots, street names and signage, curb and stabilized road base, water service for homes and fire protection, and also a hold harmless and indemnification agreement. No final certificates of occupancy are issued until after the certificate of completion of the site has been completed. In our proposed optional process, the current or traditional process is still intact that we just went over. So this allows the applicant to choose either one or the other. Under the new process, this now defines the statute now defines several new terms in law. Number one, a preliminary plat prepared by a surveyor. Number two, a final plat, which is the recordable document that we're all familiar with, is just under a new name. Also defined as a qualified contractor. These are licensed professionals, surveyors, engineers, architects, planners, landscape architects, any professional necessary to prepare any and all plans under this program. In essence, this is does not allow any small municipalities to opt out. It requires them to hire any necessary professionals if they don't have them already on staff. Our new code defines the master building permit plan. This will depict the proposed lots where the 75% of the requested building permits can be located. It will show the building footprints, setbacks, easements, and any other items that are requested for the requested building locations. Our new code before you today, Chapter 3475, contemplates the following items necessary to prepare a preliminary plat. It will require the standard PSP and final construction plans, all approved by staff. Addresses, including street names and parcel identification numbers, and proof of notification to local utility providers. It will also have a construction cost estimate, and from that, we'll have surety up to surety at 130% of the necessary improvements. This is either collected as cash escrow or letter of credit, and is our standard operating procedure. We currently use this procedure, but with a different percentage of 115%, so this brings in a slightly different letter of credit that we will have to work on. That's different from the traditional process. And then something new for this is we'll have the hold harmless and indemnification agreement, similar to what we have in the model home ordinance. If a public hearing has not already occurred for the PSP, then all of the items, the PSP itself, construction plans, and the preliminary plat will be required to be reviewed and approved by staff in order to be heard at a public hearing for BCC consideration. This includes the master building permit plan depicting not more than 75% of the lots proposed for the building permit issuance, infrastructure depicted to serve the lots proposed for building permits, and upon approval, and after the pre-construction meeting, construction can then commence. So on the screen right now shows our current traditional method and also the optional method for expedited process. Both can be used at any time depending on the business model of the developer. The optional method, if applied for, undeveloped property, may be a financial burden not easily attained by most applicants except those with extensive financial resources. In the case where an applicant doesn't have those financial resources, we also have developed a hybrid approach that may be used. In this case, the traditional method is used up to a point, partway through and including plat review. The plat review contains reviewers, certain reviewers may need to approve their functions in this plat review process, but not necessarily every plat reviewer. We would expect that preliminary plat would include approvals by survey, 911 for street names, zoning for street suffixes, Orange County Property Appraiser's Office, and a few others selected yet to be determined. This was presented at Planning and Zoning last Thursday. They found it was consistent with the comp plan and recommend approval. So in summary, we're asking the county is required to create a process called expedited approval of residential building permits for certain residential developments by October 1st, 2024. New processes proposed to release up to 75% of building permits requested by the applicant upon approval of a preliminary plat by the BCC. Required updates to Chapter 30 related to expedited residential building permits should follow in October 2024, including a form hold harmless indemnification agreement. Staff is working on developing a registry of companies as required by the statute. We've looked at several continuing contracts that we have with surveyors. We have 3, which is the mandatory minimum by statute, that have in their scope of services subdivision plat review. So we feel that the registry has been attained at this point. And so the action requested before you is making a finding of consistency with a comprehensive plan and approval of the ordinance to change Chapter 34, specifically Sections 34-5 and new sections 3475 and 3476. And with that, my presentation is concluded, and I'm here to answer any questions.
All right, this is an administrative item being brought forward by staff, so there's no applicant on this. However, we must open it up for the opportunity for members of the public to speak. Mr. Thalmuller, do we have any members of the public present who wish to be heard?
We have no registered speakers for this item, Mayor.
All right, then we will close the public hearing at this time. Commissioner Moore.
Yes, I have a question for you. So I was just trying to think this scenario through a little bit, that the legislature basically gave all the municipalities and counties to have to apply. So if we have a backlog, I hear of this in other municipalities as well, of 10,000 units, how does that impact? Does that mean that a lot of them are going to immediately go out and use this expedited process and we could see substantial construction in the next year because we versus going vertical? How do you see this working out for what the public will see?
I think that potential is there. We have several plats that are on hold at the moment, if you will, waiting on certain hurdles that the development community has to attain. In certain circumstances, trips need to be allocated for those developments. So while they're sitting idle, those projects are sitting idle, the development community says, hey, during this dead time, can we continue on with some construction processes? And so this is what they approached the state with, to allow them, can we start with some building processes, building construction while we're waiting for that. So as long as we have a plat already prepared by a surveyor in the system, we can bring that to the BCC. It will show all of the street names, all of the geometry. In essence, it's as close to the final plat as we're going to get, other than some fine tuning on some of the language and some QC that we typically see, but it will allow them the ability to start residential construction ahead of that final plat recording.
And I know we haven't done it this way historically. Can you give us an explanation of why we've done it the other way? And I know it's slower the way we've been doing it. I'm sure it's trying to be thorough. I can think of a project that I approved in my district when I first got here in 2019 that they just actually started this site work last week. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to imagine that it took that long. So I am sure the developers like that it's going faster, but what's the potential downside?
So potential downside could be if they're going too fast, and we've had this happen in the past where as the developer lays out the sites, they get their geometry off. And in one case, we saw it was 5 feet off. And when you have zero lot line homes or very narrow lots, that 5 feet is critical. And we ended up having to replat that entire subdivision to account for that 5-foot shift in a whole section of lots. So there is that possibility that going so fast, they'll have to come back and do a change determination and then redraw the plat for us to review again. But all that would happen before that final plat's recorded.
Well, I suppose they could lose some properties, and if you're off 5 feet, you might have to give up on a few lots.
There's a potential for, if that very end property could be the one that is non-conforming then, and they would not be able to build on it.
So that's the risk they take. And so just for the sake of the audience, could you explain what the platting is about? Because I know that was something that was challenging. I mean, we don't actually see that piece of it because we're on the initial approvals of PSPs, and then once it gets to the building, it's kind of out of our hands. But explain a little bit about platting and what the importance of it is, and then I think it'll be easier for us to understand the change in the law and the order of this that could occur.
Sure. So I think around 2009, the code was changed. Prior to that, all plats did come to the board for final approval. And so in 2009, the code was changed to allow the mayor or his representative to sign off on those plats, provided that a PSP was brought to the board. And in essence, that PSP gives you the general layout of where all the lots are. However, being designed by an engineer, it's down to maybe 1/10 of a foot. The surveyor prepares the plat down to 100th of a foot, and that recorded plat then allows for the subdivision of lands. It actually creates the legal document that changes the description from a meets and bounds description, where you go from this tree to that rock to this stream, and says you're lot 1 of the plat of, Orange Acres. and that makes the legal description on a deed much simpler to use. And so that plat shows all of the lots, any tracts necessary for the HOA, open space tracts, conservation tracts, stormwater tracts, lift stations. All of those are created. Necessary easements granted to the county and or the general public, private easements. Your declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which have easements in it, is statutorily required to be shown on the plat. So it really is a legal document that contains a lot of these land rights and land uses that, once it's recorded, then those can be conveyed in a much more expeditious process.
And so you're conveying it to the property appraiser, getting house numbers or all those things is what happens during that. And I know it's usually, 5 to 7 months it takes for this to be done accurately?
Yeah, during the pandemic, things slowed down considerably. Prior to that, we were around 4 to 6 months. We're now kind of getting back close to that. I'd say about 4 to 7, and I would see in the next year we'll be back in that 4 to 6 month for the majority of the plats that we see. There are plats that sometimes take a long time through no fault of our own. Sometimes the developer isn't ready to sign that check for concurrency, so they may wait until their business model says, okay, it's time to do that, and they hold on to the plat. So we track that time, how much time we have it in our shop, how much time the developer and their consultants have it in their shop. And generally, in most cases, the majority is on their time. I think in a few, it's been about even, but it's usually not in our side more than it is on their side.
Well, then it sounds like they're still going to need time. So you brought up an important point. I was just going to have to ask. At platting, that's when they pay concurrency. Sorry, and is that also when the impact fees are paid at platting? So will that change that whole process?
That's one of the areas that I haven't defined totally yet is how does concurrency and transportation play into this, and the school board. So those are things we're still in discussion with. The school board had brought up a concern that we're talking through that in essence they could have all these homes built, COs and occupants ready as soon as that final plat is recorded, which really shortens their time from recording of that plat to having time to have kids in seats. So do they have something in their process, and they're talking about it internally, that maybe they need to be a sign-off on the plat review before we bring it to the BCC for the preliminary plat to be approved?
Because I know they're always trying to delay payment of all those fees. And I would be opposed to it being a piecemeal or a CO, because it would be much harder for us to detect errors and collect the appropriate amount. So I guess if you're going to go with the preliminary plat, then at that point, are you going to have to pay all your fees?
Possibly. Again, we haven't nailed that down yet, but that's a possibility, yes.
Well, are we going to vote on that? Whose decision will that be?
Commissioner, if I may jump in. Today, our concurrency, the CEL requirement, is at plat approval. It's not at preliminary plat. We didn't have a preliminary plat before this required process. And so we engaged the school board in some fairly recent discussions. They were unaware of the potential impacts of this bill, so we were working through that. But after additional collaboration with OCPS, we will discuss whether or not it may be appropriate in certain circumstances to move the CEL requirement to a preliminary plat approval. But at least for right now, in our current codes, the CEL is at plat. And that's not what this ordinance proposed to change. Again, we're responding to the legislative requirements. We're having, again, more extensive discussions with OCPS about the potential impacts of the legislation.
Well, the legislature could opine on this next year as well. If I had to guess, they'll do it on the final plat.
But I will say that, again, this is an optional process, so developers can continue under the true and tried processes that the county has in place. Should they choose, and I've attempted to characterize the legislation and our code changes for compliance as sort of allowing early start construction prior to plat. And so today, we limit the number of homes that they can reasonably start to up to 5 models, right. 6 if it's a townhome. The bill is very clear in saying that, provided they meet these certain requirements, and we've approved a preliminary plat, then we must release a significant number of vertical permits, prior to final plat approval. And so that, again, this ordinance is attempting to bring our codes into compliance with these new legislative requirements.
No, and of course, I'm pretty familiar with that process. It was an interesting one. Well, thank you. That's the most questions I usually ask, but this is actually a very interesting process. And so I hope you'll come back and report to us. I'm sure the goal was to speed up the time that we can get houses on the market, but I hope you'll come back and also report to us any glitches or any problems.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think as we go through this, we may come back with some changes and tweaks to this code as we put it into practice. Again, with this being signed middle of this year, we haven't had a lot of time to really, work all the kinks out. So we're hoping we've got a majority of them addressed here. But like I said, as we go through, then we'll see how we need to fine tune this and that. And so at that point, we can come back and give you that report.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Commissioner Wilson.
Okay, so awesome job hitting so many of the things that were like floating through my head, because all I could think about this whole time looking at this is it seems so risky. So in practical terms, well, actually, just if you can let us know, what do you think it's going to look like in practical terms as far as the way that the development community is going to approach this?
So in my opinion, what I think we're going to see is this hybrid approach that I mentioned, where some of the developers already have their PSP approved, they've got their construction plans done, they're already under construction, and in some cases, they may already have the infrastructure in place. They're just held up waiting to get building starts.
Okay.
So the curbing is already in, the infrastructure is in. Then it would just be a matter of getting that preliminary plat back to you, which is basically sitting in the approval state, short of we don't have trips or there's some other hurdle that they don't have.
Well, and then of course that is like trigger word for everybody up here, right? Like, what does that mean as far as our ability to negotiate some of these concerns that come up at that stage about trips and about capacity, and how do we address that if there is nothing left between them and the finish line?
Commissioner, I think we'd have to go back to the individual agreements. I mean, certainly this legislation we didn't contemplate when we were negotiating and entering into those transportation agreements. So we'd have to review, some of those requirements or some of the language within these existing agreements to see where these triggers might ultimately fall and how they could be impacted. We have not done that yet.
And I think one thing also that we're contemplating, and we did this recently on a project, that we have a notification to the home buyers that would put these houses under contract, not necessarily purchase the lot yet because the plat's not approved, but a notice to them to indicate that their CO may be held up based on the applicant's hurdles that they have to obtain.
Okay.
So that way the buyer is noticed, hey, it may be a while before you can move in.
Right, because that is like you think about sort of.
And that's why the hold harmless and indemnification agreement, which you will see at the next public hearing, because it's really more related to the vertical construction, at least in part. You'll see that form hold harmless more detailed at that next public hearing.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, move approval for the requested action.
Second, Scott.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes, and it is unanimous.
Great, thank you so much.
Before we adjourn, thank you. Before we adjourn for today, obviously we have an ensuing storm. I've asked our Director of Public Safety, Danny Banks, to come forward. We had an executive policy group call during our break midday, and he'll update you. We've had some updates from the National Weather Service and talking to our community partners as well as our internal departments, and we want to update you where we are. With that, the Director Banks, you're recognized.
Mayor, thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Again, a lot of activity just up to the minute now, but obviously talking about what is now today declared as Tropical Storm Helene. Just as of a few minutes ago, Orange County is now issued in under a tropical storm warning. That was a tropical storm watch earlier today, and a few minutes ago we got elevated to a tropical storm warning. We certainly all know that Thursday is our day. Thursday will be the day of impact to Central Florida, and more specifically Orange County. Helene's projected path right now is still on a track to make landfall in the Big Bend area of the state of Florida. You see the map on the screen before you. The National Weather Service has a fairly strong degree of confidence in that projected path. You see the center of the eye, again, going into the Big Bend area, not necessarily coming over Central Florida. The one concerning factor is they expect this to be a very large storm. In fact, they classify this as one of the largest storms by volume that the National Weather Service has ever measured. Again, that's not specifically by strength, it's by volume. A very large storm will encompass a lot of areas. So thus our potential threat to Orange County. Suffice it to say, Thursday morning, there will be some a major hurricane which will be directly off of our west coast. They expect this storm will strengthen very quickly over the Gulf of Mexico and perhaps be up to a level 3 hurricane when it impacts the Big Bend coast. So that will be directly off of our western coast on Thursday. And the eastern side of any major hurricane and storm is not the side you want to be on. That will be the side we will be on. So we have an expectation of a lot of rain and some potential tropical storm force winds in Orange County. Our current forecast, we expect sustained wind speeds through the day of Orange County, somewhere between 20 and 40 miles an hour. That 39 mile per hour wind speed is the tropical storm force, and we may see that sustained level of wind in Orange County, but more importantly, suspecting in the 20 to 40 mile an hour range. The National Weather Service is, however, forecasting we will see gusts in the area of 45 to 55 miles per hour in Orange County. They expect a lot of wind gusts, current and frequent wind gusts throughout the day here for us. And again, typically 20 to 40 mile an hour sustained wind with gusts upwards of 50 miles per hour. Our rainfall currently forecast right now is between 2 and 4 inches with potential for some localized area up to 6 inches. That's where you're going to see the particular rain bands, as we know, associated with hurricanes. They're pretty confident in the 2 to 4 inches rain. If we get a major storm band that goes up, we could see some localized areas of up to 6 inches. I'll talk a little bit about our current preparations in Orange County. As you're familiar, we activated very proactively today all of our sandbag sites. We have 6 different sandbag sites that we activated in Orange County at 9 a.m. today. They will close at 7 p.m. tonight. They'll reopen again from 9 to 7 tomorrow. Those sites are West Orange Park, Claricona Horseman's Park, Downey Park, Bithlow Park, Meadowwoods Park, and we added back Barnett Park again for this particular storm. So today we saw about 1,500 sandbags distributed from our sites. That's not a lot of volume. Quite honestly, we have a preparation to go much higher than that. We do expect some more community interest in that tomorrow. That's why we're leaving those open tomorrow. But all of our sandbag sites are self-fill. We provide a lot of sand, and we provide 10 sandbags per customer. But they come and have the ability to fill up their own sand and take it home with them. We have multiple municipalities, Mayor Demings, as he mentioned a while ago, hosting that executive policy group meeting earlier. A lot of municipalities are following our order and have opened some sandbags within their own municipalities, so there seems to be quite a bit of sandbag availability out in the community. Talk a little bit about our public works activities throughout the day. You may have received some of this information earlier today in some of your discussions. Many different activities going on in public works, clearing our blockages and our drainage canals. They're checking all of our pond levels and control structures to clear any obstructions. We're staging mobile pumps in some of our primary areas that we know might likely have the need for them. So paying a lot of attention to the particular areas we know where we already have pumps, and we have pumps on standby on top of those pumps to prepare to move water as it comes into Orange County. Particular areas to talk about, Orla Vista, I know has been a lot of discussion. Public Works had a lot of confidence in that area right now. You're familiar certainly with the infrastructure improvements that have been made out there. We have a couple of feet of extra volume capability in that major retention pond. But even with that, They began pumping some water away from that area already today in anticipation of the storm water that we'll have. So we have a level of confidence, particularly with the projection of the rainfall, that we'll be able to overcome a lot of the hurdles that we saw back in Hurricane Ian. We're working right now with our South Florida Water Management District and the St. John's Water Management District to seek approval to drain some of the water off the Lake Conway area. It's at about its level right now. That water level, as you know, is controlled by weir boards, and we've asked for an opportunity to release maybe one or two of those weir boards. We don't want the community to do that, as they tried to do at one time in storms past, but we're trying to project an opportunity to release some of that water in anticipation of more water coming in. Again, I mentioned earlier our projected rainfall in the 2 to 4 inches. Feel a pretty good level of confidence with regard to flooding opportunities in Orange County that we can manage that type of water. Looking into the 4 to 6 inch area was where we project we may start to see some localized flooding. That would mainly be to particular streets that we know are prone to that. But even at that 4 to 6 inch level, we expect the roadways to flood, but not to the degree that they might be impassable. That impassable roadway flooding, particularly in neighborhoods, we project somewhere more of 6 to 8 or more inches, and currently our forecast is to not receive that amount. Our EOC, Emergency Operations Center, you're certainly familiar with all the renovations we made there. It's fully active. That will be at a level 2 activation tomorrow. That's all of those ESF desks where we operate and run our emergency operations for the entire storm will be based out of there. We'll be at a level 2 tomorrow, and we will be at a level 1 beginning early Thursday morning. So all the departments, all the functions that we run from Orange County government will be based out of our Emergency Operations Center. Mayor Demings mentioned that he hosted an executive policy group earlier today, included a lot of people, not just only our internal Orange County departments, but all of the other municipalities. We ran through many of the topics that I've discussed with you already. Mayor Demings will host another one of those executive policy group meetings tomorrow. A couple of decisions that we're pending on making is just about county closures and so forth. We want to get an updated storm forecast. I can tell you hot off the press, just a minute ago, they authorized me to brief you this. Orange County Public Schools, about 10 minutes ago, has announced they will be closing public schools in Orange County for Thursday. In fact, their announcement that they just publicized was that all OCPS events after 6 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday night, will be closed. School will be closed on Thursday. They'll wait till tomorrow evening to make a decision about Friday. But that was Orange County Public Schools discussion. And then the last, just in summary, being very cautious, being very proactive. We're hopeful that this storm's impact, both by wind and by rain, won't be terrible on Orange County, but we know from all of our collective experience being prepared as best you can, preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. That's our posture now. And then certainly the second phase of any storm is our preparedness to respond, our responsiveness after the storm, and we'll be staged up, ready to go. By Thursday evening, as the storm starts to release us from its grasp, we will start out into the field assessing potential damage, power outage, things like that in Orange County to see what the impact was. So with that, I'll open to any questions.
Before we go to questions, just I know you all want to know what county government will be doing in terms of hours of operation. We will not make that decision until tomorrow. Right now, somewhere around 11 in the morning, we'll get an update from the National Weather Service. Now, there'll be several updates between now and then, but that's a very critical period of time for us to know fairly precisely the track of the storm, what kind of impact we will have. If we are minimally impacted, we'll make a decision about what staff, if any, will not be essential personnel. Right now, we're planning to likely be open for business. We're the government. When things get tough, we don't shut down. We have a lot of work to get done. So I'll make that call tomorrow morning, probably around 11:30 tomorrow morning, whether we will close on Thursday. Okay, and depending upon what they tell us at that point about the track of the storm, that will become very, very relevant to us. If we have to do any type of shelter type of operations, obviously we depend on schools and some other locations to do that, and so that's where we are. We have our administrative policy about emergency pay and a number of other things that we will make the decision tomorrow. So with that, well, let's go ahead and if you have any questions, Commissioner Wilson and then Commissioner Moore.
Thank you. So we are so saturated already. I know I'm not telling you something you don't know, and you heard almost every single issue we brought up today rounded back to standing water. We started with Big Sand Lake in the morning, and we finished up with some of these cases where it didn't even have anything to do with an application, but we know that residents are watching it creep closer and closer. One of the things I want to ask you, Director Banks, as we look at public safety, is we sort of think of the rescue operations happening when the water is so high that we have to get people to higher ground in order to be able to. But sometimes a couple inches of water can be very dangerous. And if you could just a little bit touch on things we need to warn residents of, because I do think residents at that point, they become like the best DIYers in the world. And I worry about the power. I worry about small children. So just, kind of touching on how we make sure that if we're talking to our residents, we tell them to keep safe, even if they don't believe it's time to leave. And we'll hopefully let them know when it's time to leave. If there's water, coming into their homes, what should we tell them to do?
Well, that's a great question, Commissioner. And importantly, the first thing we want to do, if water's intruding on their home, we want them to pick up the phone and call and let us know that. But an important thing is preparing your home for that possibility. That's why we're initiating sandbag operations to give them that opportunity. But one important lesson that we've learned from years past, particularly Hurricane Ian, is we want to make sure from a public safety perspective that we've got the capability to get to our residents. And that's not just in an environment that's devastated by flood. That could be 6, 8, 12 inches of water on the street that impacts a vehicle's ability, including a first responder's vehicle, to get there. So as a fire department, one thing that we did was invested in some vehicles that have that capability to move through that water to get to the homes. And I'm talking about a home that may not itself be flooded, but the passageway to get to that home might be. And we've got a level of confidence now in our equipment that we as a fire department have that ability to get to the residents, even if it's a medical need or a fire or something like that. That we've got that ability to public safety, to provide public safety. So important to your question, advice to give the residents, as we always say, prepare your homes, prepare yourself for the possibility. If you know your lot, your home is prone to any level of flooding, prepare yourself with potential sandbags and so forth, and then prepare yourself for power loss. We hope to not have power loss, but one, with the saturation level that we're already at and the potential to see gusts of up to 50 miles an hour wind, we expect to have some trees down, and with trees going down, we lose power. So telling people to prepare for the potential that they could lose some power and the needs that they may have to sustain themselves during the hours beyond that before they get their power back. So
Great.
That's typically our recommendations.
Thank you. And I have to really quickly do my annual public service announcement. Do not go out, rush out, and clear the shelves of water bottles. You have lots of these at home. While your water's on, fill them up, throw them in the fridge, put some Ziploc bags of water in the freezer, and you've got ice for days, and you don't have to, feed that plastic machine. All right, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that we didn't really talk about was the National Weather Service cautioned about the possibility of tornadoes because we're on the right side. For us, it may not be just the potential rain or the winds, but tornadic activity, and so that's concerning to me. But our team is ready, and we are well rehearsed, fortunately, because of all the different natural disasters we've had to deal with over time. our fire department is very prepared. They've invested. We got small boats in many of our fire stations now that they can go and do rescue. So we're ready. If you recall, just early in the season, we had somewhat of a dress rehearsal, and we have continued to exercise. We have training exercises on a fairly regular basis just to make sure that we're ready to go. And all of our various municipalities and community partners that assist in this, today they all reassured me that they were ready to go. So that's the good news. Commissioner Moore.
I just have one very simple question. If people are experiencing any type of problems, and you might be able to explain what those could be, who do they call? How do they call? How do they reach the appropriate agency?
So it depends on the problem, but if it's a public safety or emergency, certainly dial 911. If it's information, dial 311. If it's power outage, and that was some of our discussion today with the likes of Duke Energy and the others, that the power is going out, we want them to immediately report that to Duke Energy so they get an idea of where the power outages is. But I would encourage anybody that's experiencing major flooding to the home, and I'm talking about flooding intrusion into their home, such that it's causing a safety issue, they can certainly call the public safety department, either the non-emergency numbers or the emergency number if they have to. Now, we're hopeful that we don't have that level of that type of flooding or emergency circumstance, that we don't have that. But Mayor Deming certainly mentioned the possibility of tornadoes. We always talk about that in every storm. And as he mentioned, the east side is what they refer to as the dirty side. That's the side you don't want to be on. And we've never really experienced a major tornado associated with a hurricane here, but time is coming for that opportunity. So any of those types of emergencies, we want somebody to pick up the phone and call 911 if they're having that sort of a safety issue.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, we're one of the few counties that has a 311 program, and it will be staffed up to make sure that if anyone wants to access county services, they're able to do so during this process. So, Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I was on the internet, so I kind of got my question answered, but I want you to answer. So what is a weir board? Can you share that for the public, for those that may not know what it is?
You're digging deep now going to me on that. But so a weir board, when you consider where the lake levels are controlled, the outlet is controlled, and you see a boarding system, it's literally boards where they can pull the boards up. So as these boards are stacked, if you remove one, the water level goes over the top and drains out. It's a complicated process, not a process, but a very complicated system, but a pretty simple process. Those weir boards, as they're pulled out, allows the water to drain out of wherever it's at towards the drainage system. Now, as those weir boards are higher, it's almost like a dam. It's really what it is. As those weir boards are higher, the water level will stop at where the level of the weir boards is. So by removing some occasionally in a thoughtful process, we can reduce the level of the water in that.
We removing it, not the public removing it. So.
We John Weiss's people will move that. Susan's folks, but I mentioned that we want to discourage that from the public, because we have had some times in the past where members of the public went to our county infrastructure systems and removed some of those weir boards. I'll mention from a public safety, that is a very, very hazardous thing to do, because water can wreak tragedy on people. We do not encourage people to touch weir boards. We do not encourage people to go to stormwater drains where they see there may be an obstruction and remove them themselves. Bad things can happen with that. So leave that to the professionals.
Well, I just have a comment to the folks of Orla Vista who are, I know, watching and listening, and the folks of Pine Hills, as the mayor has shared. We are not just prepared, but we are well prepared for this storm. And if you see something, certainly reach out to us via 311 so that if it's something we may miss or not aware of, we can address that relatively quickly. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, and commissioners, we will do a presser sometime tomorrow. I anticipate early afternoon. We'll have the most current up-to-date information, as Director Banks indicated, by tomorrow evening, we'll start probably having some rains, begin to feel the impacts. And but Thursday, what the National Weather Service said to me was Thursday is the day that we really have to be prepared for. Okay. All right. So if there's nothing else, then we stand adjourned.